go ahead and start the VOD. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope we all had a good Christmas. Mine was okay. I ended up getting the stomach bug. If you didn't see my announcement last weekend, that is why class is happening here on a Tuesday instead of a Saturday. I did want to have at least one class before the end of the year, so I didn't want to wait till next weekend. We'll still be having class next Saturday, as long as I hold out okay health-wise. I do feel a lot better, so yeah. But yeah, I hope everyone had a good Christmas. I got. Okay, here's what I got for Christmas. I got a Megaraptor figure, the Halongood Megaraptor figure. I got the book Dinosaur Behavior, What They Did and How We Know by David Hone, illustrated by Gabriel Legueto. I've been wanting to get that book for the longest time. I've read it before, but I just wanted my own copy to have. And I even got the hand claw of a Megaraptor. Very big Megaraptor year for me, apparently. Yeah. So great you're back. Well, thank you. It's been a good year. It's been a really good year for paleontology, and I'll start off with we'll probably very briefly cover every major thing that happened. We had a lot of new dinosaurs this year. We had the description of things like Mexidracon, Temeriraptor, Duonicus. Obviously, Nanotyrannus came back. Conculu, which is probably a lot more similar to Nanotyrannus, since I don't think it's a true Tyrannosaur. It's probably a Eutyrannosaur similar to Nano. Obviously, the new papers on it, Montosaurus, super fascinating. Even after I did my 2025 paleontology wrapped video, we had the paper on freshwater mosasaurs come out. It was just a really fascinating year. But yeah, what do you know about ancient crocodilians? I know that the lineage that okay, so a lot of people like to say that crocodilians are really, really old, and that's true. Their ancestors are really, really old. But what we consider to be modern crocodilians don't actually appear until the late Cretaceous. So things like caimans, gharials, crocodiles, alligators, these modern crocodilians don't show up till the late Cretaceous, right? Before that, you've got a lot of other weirder lineages, and unfortunately I'm not super into ancient crocodiliforms, so I wouldn't be able to tell you the family names of stuff like that. But there was obviously you have things like Sarcosuchus, which is a weird mix of a crocodile and a caiman thing going on. Deinosuchus was once thought to be an alligatoroid, but I think a paper this year actually moved it out of that classification. I don't fully remember where it ended up, but I know that it's not a true crocodilian anymore. But yeah, no, a lot of really strange. There's also the fully aquatic crocodiliforms that were swimming around with. There's the phytosaurs, I think. I think that's the right name. I might be wrong. But yeah, no, some crocs were like, hey, let's try the mosasaur technique before the mosasaurs show up. I'm sure someone at some point was like, what's a mosasaur? But, the question, could T-Rex and Nanotyrannus interbreed? No! So, you've got a huge size issue, but of course, the immediate thing people will say is oh, well, Chihuahuas and Great Danes. Believe me, I get it. But the thing is that not only are they very different in size, they're also not as closely related as people think. So that was one of the big things about the Nanotyrannus paper that we got earlier this year. One of the biggest parts about it is that not only does it revalidate Nanotyrannus, but it also changes how we understand Nanotyrannus as an animal, because it states that Nanotyrannus likely isn't within the same family as Tyrannosaurus rex. You have the Tyrannosauridae, which is the family, and just outside of that family is Nanotyrannus. It is in a group called the Eutyrannosaurs, which is just kind of filled with a lot of things that are just kind of between Proceratosauridae and Tyrannosauridae. I'm skipping out on a lot of details there on like how that works, but that's generally that's how that's going to look. So they're not as closely related as people think they are. And it's possible that Nano is either a migrant from Appalachia that moved into Laramidia sometime in the late Cretaceous, or it is a part of a ghost lineage. So it's just, it has a lineage of ancestors that did not fossilize well, but it did. So yeah, and that happens, that happens sometimes. So yeah. Are crocodilians crocodiles dinosaurs? No! Crocodiles are archosaurian reptiles like dinosaurs. However, they are a different lineage. Dinosaur as a term is like an actual taxonomic categorization, and crocodiles do not fall within that categorization. However, what does are things like modern birds, pigeons, penguins, ostriches, cassowaries. I mean, cassowaries already look the part. Vultures, eagles, owls, chickens, turkeys, all of those guys. All of those guys are dinosaurs, but not crocodiles. Yeah. Thank you, Sam, for the dinosaur gift. I appreciate it. Sorry if I miss out on saying names of gifters and stuff like that. I just really like keeping the ball rolling on this. But dinosaur class on a Tuesday. I had the stomach bug last Saturday, and I wanted to do a dino class before the year was up. All right, I don't care if Tuesday's a bad day. Tomorrow's New Year's Eve, and I'm probably going to be spending time with friends and family and all of that stuff. So today made sense. Can we get some love for iguanodons? What's up, Teddy? Iguanodons are super cool. So, Iguanodon itself was the second dinosaur ever named, I think in 1826. So, hey, everybody get ready for Iguanodon's 200th description day coming up next year. But Iggy has this very long history of changing its appearance. Not in the same way that Spinosaurus does, because with Spinosaurus, we were, kind of putting it together as we understood the animal. Iggy was put together in a way that was kind of a result of us not knowing what dinosaurs looked like back in the early 1800s. So early depictions of Iggy show it on obviously it's in a quadrupedal stance. It's got a horn on its nose. Very, very giant iguana look, right? Of course, we later found out that the nasal horn was actually a thumb spike and all that stuff. But what you might not know is that Iguanodon was named that way because the name Iguanodon means iguana tooth, and their teeth apparently really resemble iguana teeth. So yeah, that's how it got its name. But yeah, iguanodons and iguanodontids in general are super cool. I honestly need to make a whole video going over the different types of iguanodonts throughout the years, but really cool animals. Do you think Oshalaya is controversial? I understand. Okay, long story short, yes. Because Oshalaya is known from very few bones. I was informed that the bones of Oshalaya did actually survive the museum fire. I don't know where they are these days, but I know that they supposedly survived the museum fire. But the thing about Oshalaya's fossils is that they're very they're not very good to base an entire animal off of, especially when people want to reconstruct it. I mean, you could reconstruct it in a lot of different ways because it's so fragmentary. But the thing about Spinosaurs in general is that we don't have a great understanding of those. Our understanding of the Spinosaurs has gotten drastically better than what it was even just a few short decades ago. But even still, they're such strange animals, and there's possibly another species of Spinosaurus out there in Africa, something like that. And then you end up with a lot of these other debates of is Oshalaya, if it is something like Spinosaurus, is it synonymous with Spinosaurus? If it's synonymous with Spinosaurus, is it synonymous with Spinosaurus aegypticus? Or is it just a new species within the genus of Spinosaurus? And then you get into all of those debates and controversies and stuff like that. So long story short, yes, it is pretty controversial. Was there a Titanoboa? Yes, Titanoboa was a large snake that existed, I want to say, was it 55 million years ago? So, like, a good 10 million years after the dinosaurs went extinct, these giant snakes show up in parts of, was it Central? Might have been, like, I don't remember exactly where, but I know it was somewhere in, like, somewhere near South America. Again, mostly a dinosaur guy, so... But hey, I know Titanoboa was added to Prehistoric Kingdom recently, and let me tell you, that model is gorgeous. They don't move a lot, which I guess I should expect, but still. 55 years ago, how do you know if it was 50? I said 55 million years ago. And how did you know it existed? Because we have their bones! Or, well, fossils. Bones and fossils are different, of course, because, well, fossils are the, like, mineralized remains of bones that were, surrounded and swallowed by sediment and stuff like that. But yeah, it was 55 million years ago, somewhere around there. Titanoboa was roaming the waterways. A lot more aquatic than people think it was. Probably eating fish, which I guess that says something about how it was able to get as big as it was, getting past the square cubed law with, the buoyancy of water and stuff like that. So yeah. What dinosaurs live in Scotland? I don't know if there is any. I know that, well, no, I take that back, because I know there's a good bit of fossil beds in the British Isles. If we want to use the reference of, like, what's found all over, that part of Europe, of course, you've got things like Jurassic Age rocks that would give you things like Megalosaurus, early Cretaceous rocks that would give you things like Iguanodon. There's Scelidosaurus, I want to say, early Thyreophorine, possibly related. We're not sure if it's, like, closer to the Stegosaurs or the Ankylosaurs, but we know it's, like, really old member or ancestor of both of them, possibly. I know there's also... I know Wales has Dimorphodon. I know not a dinosaur, but cool animal nonetheless. So you'd get a lot of stuff like that. Tell me about Megalodon. Megalodon is... I will say one of my biggest gripes in the modern field of paleontology is the kryptonization. That's probably not the word, but basically turning Megalodon into a cryptid, right? This animal that's supposedly out there, right? But long story short, Megalodon was this giant cartilaginous fish or shark that lived. I want to say they went extinct like 12 million years ago. Somewhere around there, and they were all over the place, really. Much like how mosasaurs were effectively everywhere. I believe the term is cosmopolitan or universal distribution. What's really interesting about them is that kind of the way that they went out, because they went out due to pressures from animals in their own ecosystems and the ecosystem itself. Because about 12 million years ago, you see this global drop in temperature. It's the big freeze, the beginning of the big part of the ice age. And with that, megalodons are surface dwelling, warm water predators, and a lot of their prey begin moving into these colder Arctic oceans and stuff like that. And they can't follow their prey there, and suddenly it's getting colder in the waters they're already inhabiting. Suddenly the nurseries that they're using to let the baby megalodons slowly grow up until they start producing offspring of their own, they start getting really cold as well. So eventually you have this just complete collapse of their entire ecosystem. And to make it worse, the modern great white shows up and starts outcompeting all the baby megalodons. So there's no food for any of the baby megalodons, and the older ones just kind of go out slowly. So it's real tragic. Does Dakota Raptor have any official fossils yet? There is still the one specimen that I believe is in a private collection, unfortunately. There's supposedly a new skeleton. but I don't think there's been a paper on it. There's not been an official description of any new material. As of now, Dakota Raptor is kind of rumored to be a nomen dubium, which basically means we're not really sure how valid that animal is. But I don't think anyone's officially called its validity in question. So at the moment, that's more of just like, it's a little suspicious, but we'll go with it for now. But yeah. Educate us on how bumblebee hummingbirds and how they have never changed. I don't think bumblebee hummingbirds are the smallest dinosaurs to ever exist, right? Because they are like the size of your fingernail. Now, I don't know much about them specifically or how they have never changed, but they are the smallest dinosaurs that have ever existed. They're not the oldest, obviously. Because I feel like people get this confusion quite a lot because I've never said they're the oldest dinosaurs ever, but a lot of people apparently think I keep saying that. I'm just saying that they're the smallest. They're not the oldest. But yeah. Do nugget dinosaurs count as dinosaurs? Yes. Sarcosuchus. Sarcosuchus is a super cool crocodiliform from northern Africa. I think around the beginning parts of the late Cretaceous. These guys, I think they existed in the same area as Spinosaurus. However, they lived before Spinosaurus is documented to have been there. Sarco also, so if you ever see a Sarcosuchus, they have very thin snouts, right? Because they look kind of like gharials. If you've ever seen a gharial, they're kind of like giant gharials. And it's really interesting because I remember not too long ago, there was the rework of Sarcosuchus in Path of Titans, right? And they added the ability for Sarcosuchus to do something called a death roll. If you've never seen a death roll before, crocodiles and alligators as well will grab their prey, right? Usually, like, let's say, like a gazelle or a zebra or something, say we're in Africa. It grabs their prey, say it's their leg, and they'll hold on and they'll clamp their mouth shut and they'll just roll their entire body. Now, they can do this on land sometimes and they can do it in the water. Sarcosuchus, because of the structure of its skull, probably could not do that, which is a little unfortunate for the realism side of Path of Titans, but otherwise, still really cool animal. Really big animal, too. Have you ever played Primal Carnage Extinction? Yes, but not for a very long time. I never, like, I didn't have a PC when Primal Carnage was, like, in its heyday, so the only time I've ever, like, played it in modern times has been, like, well, when the game is in the state that it's in now. So, yeah. You know what, Fossil Fighters, the DS game? I never got Fossil Fighters. I really wanted Fossil Fighters when I was younger, but I never got it, and that's I'll forever be upset about that, because, like, I had a 3DS and stuff like that, too. Really tragic. The latest idea that T-Rex had a huge echo vocal sac, like, modern, so they could roar. I don't know. Okay, so we have documented evidence of things like larynxes in dinosaurs, right? Or was it a syrinx? There are two things that are typically responsible for vocalization in animals. There is the larynx and there is the syrinx, right? I want to say we have documented evidence of at least syrinxes in dinosaurs. At least syrinxes, I want to say. So a lot of the time when we think about what dinosaurs could have vocalized in what ways, a lot of the time it's pointing towards the direction of them sounding like, well, giant birds. And to be fair, go listen to a cassowary or a kiwi or any of the giant ratites or any modern, like, raptors, like the eagles, the hawks, and falcons and owls and stuff like that. Crazy weird sounds, and you just scale that up. Now, obviously, the one dinosaur. I guess there's technically two dinosaurs that we know the sound of: Parasaurolophus and Lambeosaurus. Parasaurolophus and Lambeosaurus both have giant head crests that are mostly hollow and connect to the air passageways in their nose. So for the longest time, we would always say that we knew what Parasaurolophus sounds like. The Lambeosaurus thing was a relatively recent thing. They made like this giant instrument similar to like a tuba, and they like blew into it, and they got the sound from it. Super cool. Similar things were done with Parasaurolophus like way back in the 70s, and we used to say that Parasaurolophus is the only animal or the only dinosaur that we know the sound of. And unfortunately, I hate to break this to everybody, that might not be the case anymore. Because, well, I say anymore, but what a lot of these studies lacked in considering is soft tissue. They lacked to consider that there might have been soft tissue layers inside the resonating chamber, the possibility of moisture in there as well, and also now with that with another Edmontosaurus specimen that came out, or bleh, not specimen, paper, with the other Edmontosaurus paper that came out that shows that a lot of hadrosaurs probably had fleshy crests instead of hard, bony crests, that could also drastically change how they possibly sounded. And that's fascinating. So we're back in the dark with sound, it seems. But yeah. Will I be alive next year? Ooh, I certainly hope so. I mean, I get that I was supposed to go extinct 66 million years ago with the rest of my brethren, but I hope I'm alive next year. Otherwise, I've got 2 days to live. What's that one Team Fortress mean? But yeah. Could Dilophosaurus spit venom, and was it like 8 feet? It was tall. Dilophosaurus was around 6 to 7 feet tall. Could it spit venom? We have absolutely no reason to think it could. That was literally just something Steven Spielberg and Michael Crichton were like, yeah, that's pretty cool. Let's do that. So they did that. But yeah, Dilophosaurus was a lot bigger. In some cases, they're comparable to grizzly bears, and some larger specimens could have possibly pushed like, smaller sizes for polar bears. But yeah, really big animal. Would you say the Jurassic Park is historically accurate of the dinosaurs? No, not by a long shot, really. I mean, it was good for the time, but there's still a lot of stuff in that movie that, like, at the time of its production was still, like, questionable. For one, all of the theropods are breaking their wrists. They're not supposed to hold their wrist pointed towards the ground. They're supposed to point their wrist towards, like, their bodies. Like, see here, like how the wrist of the T-Rex here is like pointed inwards towards each other, like in a clapping. It's because it's hug. Hold on. I'll do the whole gimmick. Okay. So with dinosaur wrists, it's hug. See my arms here? It's hug, not scratch. It is hug, not scratch. Okay? That's how you remember how dinosaurs place their arms, all right? It's hug, not scratch. Obviously, like, they put lips on the raptors, but they didn't put lips on the T-Rex, which always just confused me. I'm like, you put them on that guy, but the T-Rex has lost them. I don't know. I don't know. Weird, but still a good movie. Do you have a favorite dinosaur? Yes, Nanooksaurus hoaglandii. It is a large tyrannosaur from the Prince Creek Formation of Alaska, dated to about 70 million years ago. Its name is Inuit for polar bear reptile. Super cool. If you haven't seen the animated series Dinosauria by Dead Sound, I would 100% recommend you check that out, especially if you are a fan of Nanooksaurus, because Nanooksaurus does make an appearance in one episode called Our Frozen Past, and it is like the main antagonist, and I think that's like the coolest thing ever, and I loved their depiction of it. So yeah. Are there omnivore sauropods? I wouldn't call sauropods, I wouldn't say there is an omnivore sauropod, because, okay, something you have to understand, especially about these large herbivores, is that most of the reason why they got as big as they did is because their food was just everywhere, right? And think about how many animals eat grass, right? Grass is like not really nutritious at all, but it's also everywhere. So if you eat grass, you're gonna be eating good for a long time. And it's the same thing with sauropods. Their food is everywhere, so they're eating it like that. Now, of course, we see in modern day animals that there are plenty of times where giraffes or elephants, horses, deer, plenty of these animals will eat smaller animals, or they'll like chew on bones, and stuff like that. And that's to like supplement certain missing parts of their diet, like say calcium or a surplus of protein and stuff like that. That alone does not make something an omnivore. If you are mostly eating, let's say you're a sauropod and you're mostly eating these giant ferns, but like maybe once a week there's this small ornithopod that runs under your foot and you get annoyed by it, so you just grab it and like, well, you're big enough and you just swallow it whole. Doesn't really make you an omnivore. You're supplementing part of your diet, that or you're just annoyed in that case. So most of the time it doesn't count as omnivory because, well, a large majority of the diet is still herbs and stuff like that. So yeah. If parrots can talk, could dinosaurs learn to talk? Possibly, yes. But there was something I said not too long ago that I like thinking about. There's a good chance, with the amount of time that dinosaurs existed on the planet, and with how many dinosaurs we will never find and never be able to document, there is a good chance that there was maybe, let's say, a dromaeosaur, for example, whose main call was just something similar to the word hello. That's not because they're saying hello. It's just a matter of like, you know, chance, probability, and just all of that stuff. There's a chance that probably happened, but we would never know it, and I would have no way of proving it. But hey, I mean, it's possible. Which dinosaurs do you think humans would domesticate if they existed in the modern world? We have domesticated dinosaurs. I think a lot of people miss that. Because we've domesticated chickens and pigeons. They're domesticated animals. Not a lot of people like to talk about that, but like pigeons were pets and we abandoned them. That's why they continue to live in cities around us. We put them there. They're our pets. We just abandoned them. They went out of fashion. But there's a lot of dinosaurs that I think you could, and obviously domestication is a very long process, and it takes a lot of time and energy and purposeful stuff like that. And how we domesticate certain animals is very, very different. We domesticate dogs and cats as companions and partners. We domesticated things like cows and chickens and pigs for livestock. We domesticated horses for like transportation and stuff like that. So you could potentially do stuff like that with dinosaurs, but it would probably be tricky. I could definitely see like hadrosaurs would definitely be a good source of livestock. I don't say that like because I'm dressed as a tyrannosaur and I understand that hadrosaurs are probably pretty tasty. I'm just saying that it kind of makes sense. Of course, you could always get like larger ones that are beasts of burden, stuff like that. I don't see domesticating large theropods. Domesticating large theropods makes no sense because of how much amount of food you would have to give that thing and how much food you would not yourself be eating. It's just an absurd concept to do. Yeah. When will we have a lesson on the structure of dinosaurs? Well, I mean, I could give a very brief lesson on the structure of dinosaurs themselves. For one, most dinosaurs were able to get as big as they did on land simply because of their hollow bones and extensive air passageways throughout their entire body. Dinosaurs possibly had 3-chambered lungs, so they would have like these 3 sections where it's just open air. running throughout their body. You would see a chamber close to the neck, into the upper torso, and then into the lower torso. You have, obviously, there's lots of openings in their bones, so they weigh a lot less. So if you've ever wondered, why have mammals never gotten as big as dinosaurs? Well, for one, mammals have. Go look in the ocean. They're able to get past these certain issues with terrestrial animals. And then you look at terrestrial mammals, and none of them are quite as big as dinosaurs, right? That's pretty obvious. None of them are as big as the largest dinosaurs, and that's because we don't have extensive air passageways. We don't have hollow bones. We've got very dense bones, and we have just the two lungs and stuff like that in the upper chest. So this gave dinosaurs an advantage in terms of size. This gave every dinosaur an advantage in size. Just because they simply weighed less than they do. And, this is like the square cubed law, right? As something increases in size, it like triples in like mass. I think that's how that goes. I might be slightly wrong on the definition of that, but similar logic applies. So, yeah. And that's, structure of dinosaurs, and obviously other stuff like that. Hold on. Mr. Rex, is it true 65 million years ago the pollution was 10 times stronger and toxic? I mean, no, there wasn't really pollution. I mean, not on the level, not as we understand pollution. I mean, you have the asteroid, which I imagine you could count as pollution because, like, you can't park your rock there. But obviously that would, like, shoot ash up into the air, and then you have this soot, and then magma, and then all of that stuff because just, like, the impact itself. But no, not really. I mean, if you went back in time to the late Cretaceous, like, from right now, if I just, like, snapped my finger and you were in the late Cretaceous, a lot of you might be surprised by this. You would be able to breathe. Oxygen content in the late Cretaceous is not as different as people like to say it is. And even if I sent you back to the Jurassic, you would probably feel a little winded, but you would be okay. It's the Carboniferous you need to worry about. But yeah. What do I think of Archaeopteryx? Archaeopteryx is really cool. It's one of the, especially I think, God, where is it the German specimen? Specimen? Ugh. Specimen? The one that had the articulated feathers and stuff like that. That one was just groundbreaking for the field of paleontology. Archaeopteryx will forever and always have a very important part of our understanding of dinosaurs and how it just completely revolutionized. It's up there with Deinonychus as being one of the most influential and important dinosaurs out there, because Deinonychus was important because it showed that not all dinosaurs were these giant lumbering beasts, that there were some dinosaurs that were fast, nimble, and light on their feet. So that and Deinonychus really starts what we would call the dinosaur renaissance. Also, I did see the follow-up question of, like, what counts as pollution. I'd have to look up the definition of myself, but when I think of pollution, I think of things like non-biodegradable material being that is not supposed to be there. Obviously, like, I suppose technically the asteroid would count as pollution if we're going by the exact parameters of that definition. But I think pollution, as like the modern public understands it, is usually man-made and stuff like that. And of course, pollution wasn't. Like, pollution of that regard did not exist. But yeah. Catching up with chat. Are you using Ark and One and Only's One and Only's Jurassic World Evolution 2 Swamplands Dinosaur Avatar? No, this is Ark the One and Only's PK Tyrannosaurus Rex. Unfortunately, like, I really am sad that the modern understanding of Tyrannosaurus Rex has brought us to know that T-Rex did not have this amount of feathers. I'm sad about it because this is just aesthetically cool, right? This is aesthetically cooler than, like, here, hold on. I don't think I'm the odd one out in saying that the feather design looks aesthetically better than this. This is why I headcanon this to be Nanooksaurus and not Tyrannosaurus. But man, what a look this is. T-Rex feathered as a juvenile? That is possible. Unfortunately, a lot of what we thought were T-Rex juveniles turned out to be Nanotyrannus. So, we don't have any juvenile Tyrannosaurs other than Teen Rex, who's located in Colorado these days. I think even Teen Rex is only like, 13 maybe? I forget when exactly they, how old that specimen was at time of death. But, yeah. Just about to ask about the recent rediscovery. Yeah, with Nano. Hold on. I think if we're going to talk about Nano, I have to do something. See, if you're new around here and you weren't around for what happened, I am self-described #1 Nanotyrannus hater, okay? I hated Nanotyrannus. And earlier this year, the validity of Nanotyrannus was not only confirmed, but they showed that there is actually a second species of Nanotyrannus. And such, I told chat about a year before that happened that if Nanotyrannus was ever proven to be valid, I would eat a boot. I would eat my boot. I ate my boot. There you go. There's the proof. There I am. That's what I look like. And I ate a boot. Anyway. What was the biggest dinosaur? By length, it was Supersaurus. By height, it was Sauroposeidon. By weight, it is either going to go to Argentinosaurus or Patagotitan. The thing about Patagotitan and Argentinosaurus is that Argentinosaurus has fragmentary specimens that indicate they could have been bigger than Patagotitan. However, Patagotitan has better fossil material and has, like, more, like, steady estimations on size. Obviously, like, with a more complete animal, you can get a better estimation of size. But with the fragmentary material of Argentinosaurus, size estimations vary a lot more than they do in Patagotitan. So it's going to be one of those two. One of those two is the heaviest. But yeah. What was that? How long would it take a ceratopsian to regrow its horn? I'm gonna ask you something. Do your fingers grow back? No? Same thing. If you cut the horn off of a Triceratops, it's not coming back. If they lose it in a fight, it's gone. They do not grow back. Why? Because it's bone, and we don't typically shed bone. Now, obviously, there is the keratinous covering of the horn. The horns likely had a layer of keratin, which is, stuff that your fingernails are made of and stuff like that. Could that have grown back? I don't think that's impossible, but I think by and large, if you lose a giant segment of the horn, it's not liable to come back, especially if the part of the horn that comes off is bone. You're just going to end up with, like, kind of a smooth edge. So I guess if they're lucky and it's only the keratinous tip of the horn, possibly it could come back. I don't know how long that would take. But if you say, like, cut the horn off from the base, it's gone. It's not coming back. Talk about the cave lion. Well, there's a handful of different cave lions. I know there's the North American cave lion, and then you have the Eurasian one. I want to say, if we're talking about the cave lion, it's going to be Panthera atrox, I want to say. I'd also like to say that in Prehistoric Planet Ice Age, the cave lions just that was like the only animal we saw like it was the only animal we really saw a tragedy from. All the other stories throughout the documentary were really happy and like stuff like that. They had like good endings and like narrow misses and stuff like that. And I don't get it. Why'd they have to do that to the cats? But yeah, no, so you have the North American cave lion, which would have lived a few thousand, I think they go extinct, about 14,000 years ago. And they would have lived to see things like, obviously mammoths, giant ground sloths. They would have been competing with, North American hyenas, which I don't think were actually true hyenas, the giant cave bear, and stuff like that. Just really cool animals. When you go back into like North America's ecological history, it really is fascinating because we don't have the same amount of diversity of animals as we used to, and it really shows. And I really hate to see that because like we here in North America used to have so many cool animals during the Ice Age, and they all just vanish due to rapidly changing climates and also the introduction of humans onto the continent as well. It really is a shame. But yeah. And then, do we know if Therizinosaurus had a feathered tail like the Isle Therizinosaurus, or is it skinny? That's hard to say. Because, the material for Therizinosaurus already isn't great. And a lot of our understanding of Therizinosaurids comes from other genera within the family, with stuff like Erlikosaurus, and Northornicus, also like Duonicus, which was discovered this year. I will say that the way that we could, and I'm not sure if this has been found in Therizinosaurus, but a good way of telling if that was the case is that animals with big feathery tails, right? Let's say like animals with giant tail fans, tend to have fused tail vertebrae that will support a large tail structure. We have evidence of a structure like that in Dinochirus. Now, Dinochirus and Therizinosaurus are not as closely related as you would think they are based off of first glances. However, we do have evidence for that in Dinochirus, and I will say that it's not impossible on Therizinosaurus, I wouldn't say. It's just kind of a matter of whether or not that we have found that. If we have found it, I haven't heard about it. But if we have, hey, that's super fascinating, super cool. But obviously could always just be skinny. So anyone's guess at this point. What group of dinosaurs could level a small town? I think easily sauropods. You get like a large pod of like titanosaurs and just whoosh. Yeah, small town. Yeah, you ever seen the rumbling from Attack on Titan? It would effectively be something like that. Oh yeah, hold on. Before I forget, I did actually get some new models today. Well, I say today, but it was the other day. Ta-da! You recognize this boy? I hope you do, because it was just added to Jurassic World Evolution 3. But yeah, I love this guy. If multiple clades evolved complex vocals, then how are we sure it's not a more basal than presumed? I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna be honest with you. I honestly don't keep up too much with the debate on the vocalization of dinosaurs and stuff like that. I more or less just hear what comes out with papers and stuff like that. We could infer a lot from modern birds, right? Modern birds have complex vocal structures, but we see that in the fossilized remains of other groups, you don't have the same level of complexity as modern birds in those dinosaurs. For example, there was the ankylosaurid that had its syrinx. I want to say it was a syrinx. I really need to double check that, but I'm gonna say it was a syrinx. That was found that's very similar to modern birds. But again, I do believe I feel like I'm going to say something wrong again and someone's going to fact check me on that, so I got to be careful. But I'll just keep it simple at saying that I don't think we have found that there has been a same level of complexity in dinosaur vocalizations as there is in modern dinosaurs, like with birds. And you can't just what's the term? I suppose like the term absence of evidence is not evidence of absence and stuff like that. So, we could say that they probably did have more complex vocals than originally thought. But still, I would like to know for sure and have like actual findings of those complex structures before we infer that they also had them. Unfortunately, finding structures like that is very, very rare, and it will probably be another decade or two before we have any updates and stuff like that. Vocalization is always going to be something that is going to be relatively unknown and mostly speculative, and that is really the unfortunate matter of it. So, yeah. What's a good dinosaur book you recommend for an adult dino lover? Ooh, there's a lot of good ones. Rise and Fall of the Dinosaurs is always one I will recommend. I recently picked up Dinosaur Behavior, What They Did and How They Know by David Hone and Gabriel Legueto. That one is a good read. There's a new book by Mark Whitten called, I think it's partially done by Mark Whitten, I want to say, called Spinosaur Tales. There's also another one of Mark Whitten's books, T-Rex, which is really good. Admittedly, that book has not aged well because it basically all outright dismisses Nanotyrannus. And I remember the day that they said Nanotyrannus was valid, the day that paper came out, I went online and I saw that like Mark Whitten had posted a picture of his book in a trash can. And at that point, I knew Nanotyrannus was valid, because if Mark Whitten's throwing in the towel, there's nothing I can do. But yeah. Mr. Dino, how cooked are we if the T-Rex comes back? I'm gonna keep it a buck with you. Not at all. It's not Godzilla. We have weapons that would eviscerate that animal. In fact, I hope T-Rex doesn't come back for its sake. Because here's the thing. Look at what we do to animals alive today. You imagine what we would do to prehistoric animals that we brought back? Imagine that. I will also say, no matter where you stand on the whole colossal bioscience, like resurrecting the direwolf thing, no matter where you stand on that, right? There is a reason they are keeping that location secret. Because you know, if someone knew where those direwolves were, that they would go in there and try and poach them. Because it's a direwolf. This is just a human tendency that we have. So, but yeah. Pynixiosaurus. I see this name all the time, and I'm almost certain that, I'm almost certain that this is this another, hold on, is this, yep, it's another theropod that has not been given a classification. It is within its own family, and the only classification above family is Theropoda. So, this thing is a nondescript theropod that was found in first found in 1977. It is dated to the Jurassic period. Other than that, I don't think it's been given an actual designation of like what other branches it could have come from. I don't think, if I had to guess, it's gonna be a Metriacanthosaurid of some kind, but other than that, it's just one of those nondescript theropods, because we actually have a lot of those. So, yeah. My favorite dinosaur ever. Oh, you really like Irritator. Let's go. Awesome. What do you do? You talk about Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus is really cool. And I will say, I don't get the opportunity to wear my Ankylosaurus avatar as much as I should. So I will switch into that real quick. I also have other dinosaurs that I picked up recently from one of my friends. This isn't a very colorful. There we go. I like this skin palette for Ankylo. So Anky is part of the Thyreophoridae, which is a big group of animals that also encompasses the stegosaurs. These guys have bony osteoderms all over their bodies. So they have this giant chainmail-like texture. Chainmail. I don't know if it would technically be. I think the nodosaurs would be closer to chainmail because their armor and osteoderms actually overlap each other. These guys just have like the big plates all around, but they also have the giant tail. Now, here's the thing about the tail. A lot of people misunderstand that the tail is possibly a weapon against predators. I'll say this. When a weapon is a biological weapon, like a tail club, horns, antlers, whatever, when a weapon is developed evolutionarily in an animal, it is not for predators. You would not get that kind of selective pressure to have a weapon against like that kind of predator. You know what they're going to be used for the most? They're gonna be used against their own species. And we have evidence of this in ankylosaurs. There is an ankylosaur named Zool that has pieces of its bony armor that have been cracked and then were healed back over. You would also see this with things like Triceratops. Their horns were likely for fighting other members of their species. Obviously, yes, you will get these instances where they will serve the purpose as weapons against carnivores, but most of the time, they're not going to be there for the express reason of defending themselves against carnivores. They're just really good at also doing that. So yeah, it's really neat. Is Ark's Giga accurate? Not by a long shot. That thing's, it doesn't look like a Giga. It's not sized like a Giga. It's breaking its arms. I'm glad. I'm really, really glad that they're giving Ark's Giga a makeover. I'm really glad they are, because it needs one. Because that model is super old, it's super dated, and it's also way more inaccurate. Like go look at the Carcharodontosaurus, right? They added Carcharodontosaurus to Ark, right? That thing's not like super accurate either, but it's closer. It's closer to the real thing than the Giga is to its like real life counterpart. So I can't wait to see what they're doing with the Giga and when they give that thing its TLC. It'll be very cool to see it. But yeah. What dinosaur do you think lasted the longest after the meteor after other than modern birds? Ooh. That's hard to say. So what I will say is likely is that it was possibly smaller dromaeosaurs. Because here's my reasoning behind it. Asteroid makes impact. Immediately, dozens of different dinosaurs go extinct, right? You have, obviously, the ones that are in the direct vicinity of that. You have dinosaurs that are going to be going extinct within the next 24 hours very rapidly because you have the seismic energy that is erupting volcanoes all over the world, forest fires start all over the world, and all of that stuff. And once that's over, once like the fire and all of that settles, you then have the other problem, which is the fact that all of that ash, that soot, it's coming back down and it's enveloping the atmosphere, right? So it blocks out the sun, so all the plant life dies, right? So immediately herbivores are going first, right? The large herbivores are probably already gone. And the medium-sized ones and the smaller ones are going to go next. And that's going to be followed by the large carnivores. They're going to go next, right? If not at the same time. So why would the smaller carnivores last the longest, like a smaller dromaeosaurid? Because A, we know that things like rodents, right? Small mice, as well as monotreme mammals, the toothless birds that would eventually give rise to modern birds. We know that these animals survive, like lizards and stuff like that. And these animals could be a decent food source for a smaller predator. But unfortunately, you'd probably only find like a few of them, and within a certain amount of years, they'd be gone. So, yeah, that would be my reasoning for saying like a smaller dromaeosaurid or troodontid could have been like one of the last vestiges, but, you know. And of course, TikTok thinks I'm AFK. That's great. Excuse me. Can I talk about Carnotaurus? Carnotaurus is really cool. Unfortunately, Carnotaurus is only really known from one specimen. It's a remarkably well-preserved specimen. It has most everything aside from everything below the knee, as well as most of the tail. I'm trying to find my Carnotaurus avatar, but it's really buried in here. Where's my Carno? I have a Carno. There it is. Carnotaurus is an abelosaurid theropod. It is a Whoop. There we go. That's better. So Carnotaurus is an abelosaurid theropod that lived in the late Cretaceous of what is now South America. It is known from a single large specimen that preserves most of the body. It's really unfortunate that, like, the one thing this animal's known for, that being speed, is not really confirmed with fossil evidence because, well, we don't have its legs. Like, we have, like, the thigh, but, like, nothing else. But yeah, so Carno would have been one of those dinosaurs that would have lived to see the end of the Cretaceous. It would have lived to see the asteroid. It probably wouldn't have been one of the animals that were directly affected by them. They were pretty far south in South America. So they probably just narrowly missed a lot of the major destruction that would have been happening more north of them in Mexico and stuff like that. Obviously, like, you'd still have like debris raining down and probably likely went deaf, but other than that, you know. But yeah, these guys would have been preying upon things like smaller titanosaurs, such as like juvenile titanosaurs, as well as a smaller species of titanosaur called Titanomachia that lived in the region. And it also existed with another abelisaur that was named last year, I want to say, called Colacan inicasheli, which is really cool. A lot smaller than Carno, but, you know, pretty neat. And then I'm catching up with chat. Here we go. How do we know the environment Nanooksaurus lived in was cold? Okay, so this mostly has to do with geology, right? You can typically tell the kind of climate something is based off of A, geology, and B, fossils, right? For example, Hell Creek, right? The famous fossil formation that gives us things like T-Rex and stuff like that. The reason we know that that place, it was very warm, very marshy, is because A, you find a lot of plants there that would suggest that. You find these giant, like, what are their names? The cedar trees? Are they like the giant trees that we used to have in like the southern US? You find like these giant thick-trunked trees. You find redwoods, so we know that it was warm, it was humid, and we also know that it existed on like the banks of the Western Interior Seaway. So that makes sense, right? Some water comes up, gets trapped on land, and you have these giant marshy, like, areas and swamps and stuff like that. With Prince Creek, you don't find that kind of stuff, you find other plants that are very clearly adapted for a different type of weather and environment and stuff like that. So that already suggests that it's not anything like Hell Creek is. And secondly, just the geographical placement of it. We understand the kind of climates that Earth had during the late Cretaceous, and we also understand that while it was a warmer climate than it is today, that the places like Prince Creek, where Nanooksaurus is from, would have been really cold, especially in the winter, because you're just lacking all of this sunlight, because it's 120 days of total darkness. And also, I do believe in the late Cretaceous, Prince Creek was a bit more further north, so that would kind of amplify it a bit more. It's closer to the North Pole back then. So yeah, it's just a mixture of like what the plant life tells us, the geography, and just where it is and stuff like that. So yeah, it's super neat. Probably warmer summers than you would expect. Is there gay dinosaurs? Absolutely there is. You see a lot of behavior like that in modern birds, and it is pretty safe to say that at least theropods would have exhibited similar behavior patterns. So yeah, most definitely, yes. Do you think humanity would have a chance of surviving in the Jurassic period? If you mean humanity in like a throw our primitive ancestors into the Jurassic and see what happens kind of way, probably not. I don't think we would have developed along the same lines. I think we would be way more worried about, figuring out which animals are small enough for us to take down and eat, and which animals are best to avoid and not get eaten by. If you mean humanity in a modern sense, and like you send them back in time with like modern weapons and like our understanding of the animals that were alive back then and stuff like that, then yeah, probably we'd be able to get a foothold in the Jurassic. I think there are harder things that we could do, but yeah, I think so. So it just really depends. I'm talking about the woolly mice, right? So like this was another thing that Colossal Bioscience did. They edited the genes of mice in order to have like woolly mammoth hair, and it was kind of to show like what they're going to do to like an Asian elephant, because like in the same way that the dire wolves they made are just genetically modified gray wolves, when they make the woolly mammoth, it's just gonna be like a fluffy Asian elephant. It's not gonna be a woolly mammoth. It's just gonna be an Asian elephant with more hair. So yeah. How do people infer what a dinosaur looks like based off of very incomplete skeletons? Okay, so there is this process called phylogenetic bracketing, all right? If you have enough of a specimen, right, to understand the kind of animal it is, right, then you can look at the animals that it is closest in relation to and reconstruct it that way. It is a system of inference. It's not a guess. A lot of people hear me describe that and they say, so it's a guess. No, it is using elements of their relatives to reconstruct them, right? Now, can this system have flaws? Yes, absolutely. For example, up until about 2014, we reconstructed Spinosaurus with the inference of Baryonyx and Suchomimus. Mostly Suchomimus, to be fair. And what we didn't understand back then is that the missing parts of Spinosaurus' skeleton were drastically different than what we had expected and what is present in Suchomimus and Baryonyx. The tail was drastically different. The legs were drastically different. So reconstructing them using things like Suchomimus wasn't exactly correct. However, we don't fault people who reconstructed Spinosaurus like that because they were using what they had. It wasn't until 2014 and 2020 where we really had the big picture of what Spinosaurus looks like. For example, my favorite dinosaur ever is Nanooksaurus huglundi. Love Nanooksaurus, super cool animal. It is known from absolutely awful fossil material. Awful fossil material. It's enough to know that it is not an Albertosaurinae tyrannosaur, so it isn't something like Gorgosaurus, and we know that it's a Tyrannosaurinae tyrannosaur, so it's closer to things like Tarbosaurus and T-Rex. So when I went to get my logo made, if you see my logo here on TikTok or on YouTube, whenever, wherever you're watching this, you will see that it is a tyrannosaur, but it is a Nanooksaurus because when the artist that I had do it, her name's Vixen, when she was making it, I gave her the fossil material of Nanooksaurus and also reconstructions of T-Rex and Tarbosaurus skulls so that we could infer from that and get a decent structure idea for that. So it's just kind of filling in blanks with relatives. Yes, there are flaws. But it's the best thing we got until new fossil material is found. So yeah. Talk about Kentrosaurus. Kentrosaurus is a stegosaurid from Africa. It is smaller than a stegosaurus by quite a good bit. You would probably, like, if you wanted to look Kentrosaurus in the eyes, like, you as a human would probably have to, like, look down a bit and be like, hi there. What's really neat about Kentro is, and then you eventually see this on like other stegosaurids, is the shoulder spikes. Kentrosaurus has these massive spikes coming off of its shoulders. It's a good, and also, to be fair, have massive spikes running down its back and tail. The spikes and plates of Kentrosaurus at some point seem to kind of fuse, so you have like these more plate-like structures near the head, which eventually, like, as they progress down the body, are getting a lot bigger and also getting rounder and pointier. So it's this gradient of plates to spikes until you get to the very end of the tail and you get the large thagomizer structure, right? Now, again, weapons on animals like Kentrosaurus and stuff like that would more than likely be used against other members of their species rather than predators. Of course, they would also be deterrents against predators because, like, well, like, say, for example, you've got to go and, like, catch something to eat for dinner, right? You're probably going to think twice about going after a moose because, A, it's huge, and B, it's got those giant antlers and it's going to, like, fling you into, like, the next state. So yeah. But yeah. Are you the type of person to correct people when they say their favorite dinosaur is one of the flying non-dinos? Yes, I am. Because they're not dinosaurs, and people should really know that, and I will forever fight to make that common knowledge. Pterosaurs are not dinosaurs. Marine reptiles, mosasaurs, plesiosaurs, ichthyosaurs, not dinosaurs. None of them are. Those are their own separate branch of animals. They're their own things, very unique animals, very cool animals. Them not being dinosaurs does not make them lesser, but they are equally as cool as dinosaurs. They all lived during the Mesozoic. Just because something is a reptile, just because something lived in the Mesozoic, does not make it a dinosaur. Dinosaur is a taxonomic name, and you should use it as such. Anyway. Let's talk about Megalania. Ooh. So, like, here's the thing. It's not called Megalania anymore. I mention this every time Megalania gets brought up, but it's not called Megalania. It is Varanus priscus, and that is because it was found to actually be a lot more closely related to modern monitor lizards than originally thought. Also, this is another one of the new avatars that I got. This is Yichi. A lot of you guys will recognize this as the dinosaur that has wing membranes instead of feathered wings, and it's also the dinosaur that I have a figure of that you can buy from BioBuild Studios. Check that out, by the way. Hold on, what was I lost my train of thought. That's my bad. Dang. Well, God, what was I? Oh, Megalania. Yeah, so Megalania was found to be, you could still call it Megalania. That's kind of like a common name for it now. Like, obviously, like, the binomial name for things like modern wolves, like, let's say the gray wolves, it's Canis lupus. And like if you say Megalania, that's just its common name now, right? Like it's just like saying wolf or gray wolf, right? It's just Varanus priscus now. It's very cool. Lived in Australia during the end of the last ice age, of course, or which is technically the end of the last glacial maximum because, you know, Earth is still in an ice age, but yeah, that's a rough topic. But yeah, it's very cool, possibly venomous. Though like the reason we suspect it was venomous is because modern Komodo dragons and stuff like them are venomous. So yeah, I don't know if there's like evidence backing up Megalania being venomous, but possibly. But yeah. Do 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 do. Could dinosaurs have lived on the North Pole ice sheets like modern day penguins? Well, penguins are the South Pole. But yeah, we have evidence of dinosaurs living in Antarctica and the Arctic. Obviously, the Prince Creek Formation shows that dinosaurs were living in subarctic conditions and stuff like that. It would have been a lot warmer in the poles at the time, but it would still be pretty cold. We also have dinosaurs like Imperobator, Cryolophosaurus, Morosaurus, Antarctica pelta, stuff like that living in Antarctica. So we've got a lot of documented evidence of dinosaurs living in very frigidly cold conditions. Which also, you know, backs up the idea that dinosaurs could regulate their internal body temperature. Possibly not warm-blooded, but also not cold-blooded, so something in between. The whole idea of warm versus cold-blooded, much like a lot of things in life, is a very oversimplified explanation for kind of this gradient, because warm and cold-blooded is a lot more spectrum-ish than you would imagine. So yeah. How much damage to the ecosystem would bringing back dinosaurs do if possible they breathe and well, they'd be fine to breathing. Again, oxygen content in most of the Mesozoic is not as different as it is today. But it would be really bad. You would see complete ecological collapse pretty much everywhere. Like if you let's pick a time and place. Let's say we brought back all of the dinosaurs from the late Jurassic. Okay, cool. So now we've got megalosaurids all over the world. The megalosaurids, metriacanthosaurids, allosaurids, ceratosaurids, stuff like that. You have massive stegosaurs everywhere. You have massive sauropods everywhere. You bring back, I suppose we'll also bring back the pterosaurs, even if they aren't dinosaurs and stuff like that. Here's the immediate thing. So first and foremost, you'd have a lot of North American animals just outright, like a lot of North American sauropods that just appear, they'd be gone overnight. Why? Because a lot of North America during the late Jurassic, would have been mostly forests and stuff like that. You don't see the rise of grassland ecosystems until the Ice Age because, well, grass didn't really exist in the way that we understand it back then. So you just just drop a Brachiosaurus in the middle of Kansas and it's going to be like, I've got nothing to eat out here. I guess I'm going to starve. So in certain instances like that, you would just kind of have the dinosaurs just collapsing and stuff like that. But in other places, you would have sauropods that would just completely rip down forests, eat them bare and stuff like that. You would have theropods, because like another thing to consider is that mammals reproduce slower than reptiles. Dinosaurs could lay, like, sauropods could lay thousands of eggs in one go and just leave them there and let them hatch, right? Now, a lot of those are going to, like, a lot of the ones that hatch are going to end up not making it to adulthood. But when you think about it like this, like, think about, like, what it's elephants have like a 13-month gestation period when they're pregnant, and then it takes like another like good 18 years for them to get near to their adult size, somewhere around there. I'm not like super into elephants, so I wouldn't know, but like think about that, and then think of like an Allosaurus suddenly in like North Africa, and it's like taking down all of the juvenile elephants. You're effectively stopping a whole new generation, right? And it would just be a complete disaster. So yeah. I wonder if you could bring back one dinosaur, what would it be? I would bring back Nanooksaurus because I'm selfish and I want to see my favorite dinosaur. Sorry. That or the passenger pigeon, Carolina parakeet as well. Very cool animals. Can I beat up a Utah raptor? No. Did it rain for 2 million years? Yes. That was sometime in the Triassic, I want to say. But yeah. Okay. I'm paying $29.99 monthly Dino class. Why end it? You're paying me? What? Also, I'm not ending it. It's the last class of 2025. Well, I'll be back next Saturday. I ain't going nowhere. So yeah. Versant, yeah. Talk about Utyrannus. Utyrannus is really cool. So Utyrannus is oftentimes mistaken as like a tyrannosaur. And by some definition of the term, yeah, I suppose it is. But it's not a tyrannosaur in the sense that other things are. Utyrannus is a Proceratosauridae family member. But the family of Proceratosauridae falls within the superfamily of Tyrannosauroididae, which also houses the family of Tyrannosauridae, which is like the true tyrannosaurs and stuff like that. Now, Utyrannus lived in the early Cretaceous of what is now China, in the Yichuan Formation, I believe it's pronounced. Yudi is the largest animal with confirmed plumage, or like evidence of plumage, or direct evidence of plumage, I should say. And I believe there was an adult specimen and then two I'll say adolescent because they're not fully grown, but they're still like pretty large animals. But there are 3 specimens. 2 of them are not adults. 1 of them is a large adult. And I do believe it is the second largest member of the Proceratosauridae family. It is second only to Sinotyrannus. But yeah, Yudi is a really cool animal, and I really, really love it. And it's possibly my second favorite dinosaur of all time. Second only to Nanooksaurus hoglundi, because it is a true feathered tyrant. Because it is a true tyrannosaur. Is Utyrannus really feathered? Like confirmed? Yes. The larger adult specimen has impressions of feathers on its fossil. Like you can see the feathers on it, and it's really fascinating. It's like you don't get much better evidence of feathers than that. So yeah. Do you prefer the Jurassic World Carnotaurus or Disney's Carnotaurus? Not based on accuracy, just pure design. I judge designs based off of accuracy. So, the Disney dinosaur Carnotaurus isn't bad. I will definitely say that it's got a lot more of a like a dude bro kind of look to it, in a sense of it's just kind of rule of cooling it to look it's cool because it wants to look cool. And it's pretty rad. I would say that the Jurassic World one is probably better in my opinion, because it's, again, I rank design based on accuracy. That's how I rank designs. So like if you're asking me, inevitably it's going to be based off of accuracy. So I'm going to say the Jurassic World one. And it's still not great. The Jurassic World one has its own flaws and issues, and I've got my gripes with it, but even still, I like it. So yeah. Would carnivore try to eat humans? Would a give or take T-Rex sized carnivore try to eat humans? Humans actually react and try to. That's hard to say, but I will say that there is a certain point. Okay, something that I think was a lot more common for me to talk about before Nanotyrannus was validated was the fact that an adult T-Rex would probably not pay any individual person mind. However, a growing T-Rex, a adolescent Tyrannosaur that is learning to hunt, and is also needing something that is about its size as a meal would most definitely go for a person, because we would be a perfectly sized meal for a growing T-Rex. Now, an adult probably wouldn't pay as much mind, like I said, unless it is exceptionally desperate. Now, if you just stand there, obviously, like, T-Rex is like, oh, okay, cool. So you're not gonna run. Cool. I'm just gonna free food, right? But it would have to be somewhat desperate to go for a human, because yeah, maybe it will catch up to you at some point. Maybe you'll get away from it for a while, but at some point during the process of chasing a decently athletic person, it's going to be wasting more calories than it's going to get out of, like, consuming them. So at some point, it's just not beneficial. Are you the guy that said the eyes face forward thing? I am. Yes, that's me. Hi. I said the its eyes face forward, just like ours do, giving it binocular vision. I'm more than certain that I stole that line from someone. I just can't remember who it came from. But yeah, no, that was me. Will you have a podcasting career in the near future? I have a podcast. I don't know why people don't know. I have a podcast with Dino Guy and Paleo Pizza. It's called the Paleo Pod. Go check it out. It's on YouTube and Spotify. We're on hiatus at the moment because of the holidays, but we have a podcast. We've been running it for like 9 months now. We have weekly episodes. What is the biggest dinosaur we could keep or domesticate? I don't know. Mostly because, like, we keep a lot of animals, and we also domesticate a lot of animals. I think, like, some of the largest animals we've domesticated are things like horses and cows and stuff like that. So probably stuff around that size. Domestication is a lot different than I think a lot of people think it is. Like, domestication isn't just like, hey, I'm taking you from the woods and you're going to be my pet now. Domestication is an actual physical change in the animal's anatomy to better fit the living standards of a symbiosis or symbiotic relationship with another species. Like, or with us, I should say. But, like, because if you look at dogs have more face muscles. Like, they have more muscles in their face than their wild counterparts, because they were domesticated and bred to have those so that they could be more expressive and more communicative with humans. Right? Like, domestication is a complete physical change of the animal's anatomy in some cases. Especially when you look at, like, how big we've gotten domesticated dogs and how small we've also gotten them as well. But, you know, again, we've domesticated pigeons and chickens in similar ways, so also parrots, parakeets, stuff like that. Well, they're I wouldn't say they're domesticated, but you can keep them as pets. But yeah. Can I hit the gritty again? You know, it is a real shame. I don't think. Yeah, a lot of these newer avatars don't have the gritty anymore, and that is a real shame. So if I'm gonna hit the gritty, I'll go ahead and just unlock my arms. There we go. I haven't done this in a while. People haven't really asked me to do the gritty as a dinosaur in a hot minute. Are crocodiles dinosaurs? Nope. They are archosaurian reptiles, much like dinosaurs, but they themselves are not dinosaurs. They're their own thing. How dangerous would pterosaurs be if they had talons like modern-day birds of prey? Pterosaurs don't need talons to be dangerous. I mean, yeah, like, you would have to worry about them, like, coming down and, like, grabbing you and stuff like that if you were a dinosaur in the late Cretaceous, but, like, I think the way that large as darkid pterosaurs hunted on land was way scarier than anything that could have, like, anything they would have gained by adding talons. Because, like, instead of just swooping down, grabbing you, and then, like, taking you to a nest or dropping you from a high place just to kind of, like, get it over and done with, instead of that, as darkids would land on the ground, chase you, galloping like a horse, and then, like, let's say you're a small ornithopod, like a juvenile hadrosaur, grab you and likely swallow you whole. I think that's way more terrifying than anything they could get out of doing anything with their talons. But I suppose it could be more dangerous doing that. I don't think, and here's my thing. Here's another thing to consider. I don't think their body would really adapt to that well. I don't think they'd be able to pick up things the way that modern birds can, because their anatomy probably isn't built for that. Just quite simply, like, look at their entire body anatomy. Like, especially as dark, it's very skinny because they have to be super large animals, and if you put on too much weight, you're not gonna get off the ground. So, yeah. Yes, I've seen a pelican swallow a pigeon. Yep, exactly like that. Who would win, T-Rex or woolly mammoth? Whichever one's heavier. Could you actually tame a dino Ark style and ride it? Isn't like a Anki trying to decapitate? I highly doubt it, but hey, you get sent back to the late Cretaceous. Wish you the best of luck. I think Ark's taming style is just that. It's just a taming style for a game mechanic's sake. So yeah. How closely related to the are the dire wolves to true wolves? Not very. Used to, dire wolves were a part of the genus Canis, which is a part of the genus that which is the genus that houses modern wolves and dogs. But we know now that dire wolves are not a part of the genus Canis. They are instead a part of their own genus called Anoscion. So they are Anoscion dirus. So they're closer in relation to things like jackals, I believe. So yeah, like, they're not as closely related as you would expect. I mean, they're close, sure, but not as close as you would expect, Do you believe there is a ton of preserved fossils under the Antarctic ice? More than likely. I definitely don't think that's impossible. The unfortunate reality is that if we end up at a point in history where we are able to excavate a lot of that, and like all of those ice sheets melt away, yeah, no, that's probably not good for us. So, yeah. Starting to think bro doesn't know what Altospinax is. There is a lot of people here, man. I apologize for missing your question. Altospinax, previously known as Beckelspinax, was a Carcharodontosaurid. I believe it's from somewhere in Europe, though I'm not entirely confident. It has a lot of reconstructions that are typically reminiscent of that of Concavinator, which also is a small Carcharodontosaurid. That one is from Spain. So some depictions will give Altospinax a sail like that one as well. I'm not familiar with a lot of the fossil material of Altospinax, so I couldn't say more if it did have that or not. I don't know if that's just something that it absolutely did have, or if it was something that's just inferred from Concavinator. But yeah, either way, really cool name. It flip-flopped between Beckel and Altospinax for quite a while, and the specifics as to why I was going to do a video on like Altospinax at one point, and I was reading over the justifications for name changes, and it just got so confusing at one point because it starts out as Altospinax, then it was named to Beckelspinax, and then it was renamed to Altospinax, and at some point it was a Megalosaurus, and then it got complicated. Same thing with Latinivenatrix and stuff like that. But yeah. How big were the compies from Jurassic Park? They IRL, here's the funny thing. IRL, we're not sure how big compies are, because most Compsognathids that we have ever found are juveniles, and we're not exactly sure how big they could have gotten. So the ones in Jurassic Park could have potentially been the right size, they're closer to the juvenile proportions. They were like barely a foot tall, I want to say. I know that in the novel they're venomous. We have no reason to think Compsognathids were venomous. Cool animals, nonetheless. But yeah, are Spinos good swimmers? No. There is the current leading theory is that because of Spinosaurus's very dense bones, it likely sank rather than it swam. Likely meaning that you would get similar kinds of locomotion as that you get with like hippos and stuff like that in Spinosaurus. Obviously, people are still on the fence and still debating this, but I am on the side that a lot of the animal's anatomy and morphology points towards a shoreline water wading predator that is going to be eating large fish that are swimming by and stuff like that. So yeah. Who win a fight, T-Rex or Spino? My answer is always going to be whichever one's heavier. In this case, it is T-Rex. T-Rex is heavier, so it would probably win that fight. How many fossils could still be remaining? Oh, millions, thousands. It's unimaginable how many fossils could still be out there. And here's the sad reality. We'll probably never find all of them. Obviously, like a lot of fossils have been destroyed over the course of the last like 200 years of paleontology. There are a lot of fossils that will obviously just probably got destroyed before humans even rose up onto our hind limbs. A lot of fossils just never even appeared. Some animals never left a trace behind. They existed on this planet for millions of years and likely left nothing behind. We'll never we'll probably never find all of the fossils, though it would be really cool if we could. So yeah, doesn't Spino weigh more than T-Rex? Nope. T-Rex weighs a lot more. A lot of T-Rex's specimens are you have certain specimens of T-Rex that are between I think younger adult specimens are on the lighter side of 8 tons, and then you have like big specimens that are like 10 to pushing 11 tons, and then you have fragmentary specimens like Cope and Goliath, which possibly push 12. Now, obviously, this is like with preservation bias in mind, so T-Rex has a lot more abundant fossil material than Spinosaurus does. But Spinosaurus' specimens are usually around 7 to 8 tons, so similar, but nothing bigger than some tyrannosaurs. So, yeah. Estimate for some 11, 12 average, not full grown. What, for Spinos? I don't think so. But I agree that Ankylosaurus is top 10 dinosaurs. It is definitely cool. I'm a huge theropod fan, and I have a huge bias towards theropods, so I don't know if it would end up in my top 10, but it is definitely like a super cool dinosaur. And I would say it doesn't get talked about enough, but it does. You see, people always mention Ankylosaurus everywhere. It's like a go-to dinosaur for some, and it is rad. It's this giant armored dinosaur with a giant club tail. So super neat. Why do spiders have the big thing on their back if they don't swim? Likely for display. There's a lot of different structures on Spinosaurus that seem to serve the purpose for socialization or display. It's got the crest on its head, the sail on its back, and the tail. Now, a lot of people will point towards the tail and say, hey, that was used for swimming. No, it's not. The tail does not match the morphology that you see with a lot of other animals that have tails for swimming. When you look at animals that have tails for swimming, you will notice that they have a noticeable tail fluke. When you look at Spinosaurus, however, here's what you see. You see an animal that has a tail that is almost entirely parallel throughout its entire structure until the very end. The entire thing is roughly the same like height throughout the whole thing. It's a very uniform tail. You don't get that kind of tail structure for something that is meant for swimming. You would have a noticeable fluke near the end. What you do see on animals with tails that look like this is that they're more meant for display. Spinosaurus was likely sitting around near the edge of the water, chilling all day long, not usually worrying about stuff, and it was eating these big protein-rich fish, getting big and fat, and it was using the sail and the crest and the tail as a way of like advertising itself to like whatever mate came by. That's how I see it, at least. Is D-Rex the newest big dinosaur? D-Rex doesn't exist. That thing was fictional. And it is really okay. I don't know if it's the people's media literacy, but I've noticed that there is a startling amount of people that think the Jurassic World hybrid dinosaurs are real. I've had people tell me that their favorite dinosaur is Indominus Rex or Indoraptor or Scorpius Rex. They're not real. None of them are. I hate the route that the Jurassic franchise is going, and it's probably only going to get worse. Oh Lord. But yeah. Can we predict population of prey predator species based off of the size of the food needed, repopulation needed? Probably. You would need to speak to an ecologist about that. I think, and here's something that you can work with here. I think not too long ago there was like a research paper done that showed that within the 2 million years that T-Rex existed on this planet, right? T-Rex existed on this planet for 2 million years, 68 to 66 million years ago, right? In that time, over 2 billion Tyrannosaurus Rexes existed on this planet. Now, a large majority of them would not have seen adulthood, right? And that's important to note. A lot of them would not have lived to see adulthood. But there were 2 billion T-Rexes on this planet, more or less. In total. Not at once, obviously. Not at once, but yeah. So yeah. Were large theropods cannibals? Yes, I do believe we have evidence. Evidence for that. I think T-Rex has evidence of cannibalization as well. Obviously, there's Majungasaurus, which is the popular example. But yeah. Personal opinion on the best herbivore against T-Rex? I mean, best herbivore in general, any large titanosaur. I mean, you could take Alamosaurus from like further south in T-Rex's territory and use that. In Hell Creek, I will say Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus, mostly because, like, here's the thing, right? Let's say you're a T-Rex in Hell Creek. You come up to a watering hole, and you've got 3 choices for large prey items. You have a fully grown bull at Montosaurus, which is roughly double your size. You have a fully grown Triceratops, which is of similar size to you, but has these massive horns on its head that are longer than your face, if you're a T-Rex in this case. And then you have Ankylosaurus. Ankylosaurus is a heavy, low to the ground, armored, and armed prey item for T-Rex. Here's the thing. Logistically, even with all of that, all of these are bad ideas for a T-Rex to pick, right? So that's why most of the time T-Rex would probably be going for the younger individuals and not the adults until they were in their elderly stages and too weak to fight back. But even still, I would say out of those 3 options, the Ankylosaurus is probably the worst one to pick. It's going to be hard to bully, it's going to be hard to get into, and it's going to be hard to bite into. It's just overall a really bad time. So yeah. I'm not answering that one, Dot. Why does the Spino look weird? What do you mean, why does the Spino look weird? What do you mean? I mean, other than the fact that it's dragging its tail, this is just kind of what Spinosaurus looks like. I'm sorry to say. the 2001 Jurassic Park 3 Spinosaurus, it lied to you. It doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. I'm sorry. But yeah. Chilanosaurus. I don't know much about Chilanosaurus, so here's what we're going to do. Got Chilisaurus. I don't think that's. Hold on. We're gonna look that. Why did Cardo have horns? Probably for selection of a mate. You see that a lot of theropods. Oh, hold on. Tyrannosaurus. Here we go. You see that a lot of theropods have these lacrimal crests that are on top of their eyes, or like just behind the eyes or in front of the eyes, and you also have like nasal ridges and stuff like that on certain animals. But a lot of the time that's going to be for display, maybe intimidation of rivals, and stuff like that. It would probably serve realistically no actual function. I don't think they could realistically like stab anything with their horns. Here we go. Chilanosaurus is another nondescript theropod. Here we go. So Chilanosaurus appears to be another theropod that has very little fossil material from it. It hasn't really been given a family designation, so it's not in any major family from what I can tell. It is literally just been given the name of Avatheropoda as well as Theropoda. Some people reconstruct it based off of more Megaraptoran material. Some people say it's closer to the Allosaurids, but other than that, it's mostly just a nondescript theropod that is mostly fragmentary. And you end up with a lot of these. There's a lot of different things. What was the other one? There was Titanovenator, the potentially largest abelosaurid, which has not been officially described. There's the Uzbek giant, which also hasn't been given like a full description either, because its fossil material is just bad, and it's mostly non-descriptable. So yeah. What is better, bone tusks or ivory tusks? I'd say ivory tusks, because bone tusks sounds painful. Ivory tusks, I think would be just kind of better, probably more durable. So yeah. Was the smartest dinosaur? Smartest dinosaur, like obviously it's really hard to gauge intelligence of extinct animals, right? But the best metric that we could use to figure that out is brain to body ratio, right? Like how big is their brain compared to the rest of their body? So the dinosaur with the largest brain to body ratio is Troodon, but Troodon is like really controversial, and we're not sure if Troodon even exists quite yet. So I will also say in Troodon's place, Stenonychosaurus and Latinovenatrix, just to be safe, depending on which name gets adopted and which name is thrown out in the near future. So we'll see. So, and then obviously you have modern corvids like crows and ravens that are like very intelligent, and they can speak. Like they actually, instead of just repeating words, will use words in correct context, and it's really cool. They understand water displacement and stuff like that. So yeah, very, very cool. Dinosaurs were very, very intelligent. Utah raptor or grizzly bear, whichever one's heavier. How close was the mutualism between Stegosaurus and Camptosaurus? Again, hard to say. I have a feeling most of our understanding of that would be speculative. I don't know if there are any particular fossil beds that have shown that Camptosaurus lived among Stegosaurus. But if they did, I suppose the Camptosaurs would serve as early warning detectors, where Stegosaurs would serve as like the main protectors of the herd. They would be the big ones, the ones the carnivores would be afraid to approach. But I don't understand, or I don't think we have a very good grasp on what kind of relationship the two genuses had, much less the kind of relationship they would have had if they were like living in cohabitable herds and stuff like that. So if there is evidence on that, then then I haven't seen it just yet. What's your opinion on Oshalaya? Do you think it's its own species, or do you think it's just a spino? I don't have an opinion on Oshalaya because I don't think the material for it is good enough. We know that Oshalaya is a large Spinosaurid from South America, and that's it. And I think that's where it's going to be until new material is found. I think any argument one way or the other is probably not going to end with a solid conclusion until new material is found. So I don't have too much of an opinion on it because I think at the moment it just needs to fall somewhere in the miscellaneous category until we can get more material. So, yeah. Are Megaraptors easy to survive? No. Megaraptors are I don't think there is a single Megaraptor that I would describe as too big to pass up something that is human-sized in terms of meal choice. Oh, wow. We've actually been going for a lot longer than I thought I did. But I do really like Megaraptors. They're really cool. Okay. So here's the thing. I'm going to go ahead and end class here because we usually go for maybe an hour and 20 minutes. We've been going for about 20 minutes longer than usual. And I do have to go and do stuff later today. So I am going to go ahead and end class here. But I'm going to end class with just kind of hanging out and talking with you guys for a brief minute on kind of how I feel about certain things. So the year's coming to an end, and that's crazy to me because it feels like the year just started. This year went by so incredibly fast, but also this year has been like probably the best year ever for like where things are heading for me, because like we hit 100,000 followers here on TikTok. I got to meet an incredible amount of like my favorite content creators. I started a podcast with two of my favorite dinosaur content creators. I've got to hang out with people who inspired me to start doing content, and it's just been an incredible year. So I'd like to take the moment to thank you guys for everything. You're just simply having your attention, your likes, your comments, your shares, just having you guys follow me has just irreparably changed, like, I don't know if I'm using that word correctly, but has completely changed the course of like where my life is likely to end up at some point, and it's been great. So thank you guys so much for an amazing 2025, and I'm really looking forward to an even better 2026. So yeah, I hope you guys have a good rest of your year. And I will see you this Saturday for another Dino class, and our first Dino class of 2026. So you guys take care, and I'll catch y'all later. Y'all be safe. Have fun. Bye-bye.